Hello, everyone. Good morning. Good morning, wherever you're joining from. Good morning. We're waiting for more people to join us this beautiful morning, 10th of June 2026. We're having a very important conversation today, and we know a lot of people are looking forward to this webinar. So we'll just give it some 2 minutes and allow more people join, and then we'll get right into it. While it's technical, can you play the group? Let's wait for more people to join. And as you're joining, please tell us where you're joining from. Where you're joining from. Where are you joining from? Lagos, Abuja. Also, you can share with people around you, share with your friends, share with your colleagues. Let them join this webinar this morning. Now, this is an unpaid webinar. And trust me, this is knowledge that you don't want to lose, or you don't want people who you know are CEOs, COOs, CTOs would want to, gain from this morning. Kindly share with people, share with your friends, share on your WhatsApp, share on Instagram. Just share and tell people to join this webinar this morning. And they can also, stream live on YouTube at Focus Group Limited. On YouTube at Focus Group Limited. you. Thank you for joining. Thank you. I think we're going to just get right into it. We waited for at least 5 minutes for more people to join. Good morning, everyone. Thank you for joining, wherever it is you're joining from this morning. Good morning. We all know why we're here. Focus group is going to be 10 come August 17th, 2026. And of course, to give back for 10 years of profitability, 10 years of doing business in Nigeria, in West Africa, we decided to put together this webinar series to give back to businesses, to give back to individuals. If you're in the corporates or you are an aspiring business owner, this webinar is for you. We've had 3 webinars in the past, and this is the 4th one. And we're hoping that the next 3 webinars will just be as impactful as the past series of webinars. All right, today we have somebody who we believe that is an immense privilege to have her as our guest speaker today. Such an immense privilege. The topic for this webinar is CAPEX to OPEX, a case for managed businesses. A case for managed businesses or managed services, either way, right? And you all agree with me that for several decades, organizations have been investing heavily in capital expenditure. They've been investing in infrastructure. But now a lot of people are beginning to move from that to OPEX. And today, Mrs. Adedoyin Amosu is going to do justice to that. In the light of being modest, we decided to just, ensure that we summarize rather her bio. So please get ready to listen to her bio. And from there, we'll have her introduce herself to us again, and then we'll take it from there.
Non-Executive Director Living Trust. Mortgage Bank PLC Independent Non-Executive. Director First Nominees Limited, First Bank of Nigeria Subsidiary, Strategy, Operations, Digital, Leadership and Transformation Expert. Ex-PwC. Adedoyin Amosu holds a BSc in Zoology from the University of Jos, a postgraduate certificate in Supply Chain Management and Logistics from the University of London, and completed the Advanced Management Programme at Lagos Business School. She is a Fellow of ICANN and CITN, a member of the Chartered Institute of Directors, a Certified Process Practitioner, and an ISO 9001-2015 auditor. With over 2 decades of experience, she specializes in business restructuring, project and corporate finance, risk management, internal audit, privatization, valuation, strategy development, operational efficiency, and change management. At PwC, as director, she led business development across industries, managed risk and financial controls, and served as risk management champion, financial services industry champion, and learning champion. Previously, she was head of leasing in a leading leasing company, CFO of a venture capital firm, and held HR development roles. Her industry experience spans manufacturing, logistics, financial services, oil and gas, government, and not-for-profit sectors. She serves on the board of Cosmo Farmers Limited and several not-for-profit organizations, bringing valuable expertise to the Roads Advisory Board.
Hi, everyone, once again. I'm wondering what happened to technical. They were meant to present the bulleted points. I guess everybody's, they seem to be a little bit worked up. All right, I'm going to read right here. Who is our speaker this morning? Adedoyin Amosu. She is a board advisor. She is a founder and lead advisor at Rhodes Peters Limited. She's also the co-founder at Cosmo Farmers. She is an independent non-executive director at Living Trust Mortgage Bank PLC. And also she is a non-executive director, First Nominees Limited, First Bank of Nigeria subsidiary. Finally, she is a strategy, an operations, a digital, a leadership and transformation expert. And she is an PWC. Let's welcome our guest speaker today, Mrs. Adedoyin Amosu. So you can drop emojis, clap, clap, clap. Thank you so much for joining us this morning, Ma. Thank you. You have the floor, Ma.
Thank you very much, Anu. Good morning, good afternoon, good evening, depending on the part of the world you're joining us from. And congratulations, Focus Group at 10. It is indeed a privilege to be here with you. And I plan to share the little, let me call it the little I know about managed services. And this promises to be a very interactive session. And at the end of the day, I believe we'll all be better for it, having maybe rubbed minds a bit. So I learn from you, you learn from me, and we help celebrate Focus Group at 10. So I won't say anything more about Adedoyin Amosu. I think a lot has been said about her. And today, the focus, well, I'll say the focus should be on Focus Group at 10. With particular reference to managed services. So let's just get into it and move right ahead. I'll just share with you what I'll be talking through today. So I'll take us through a background of managed services. I'll talk about the trends. I'll talk about the risks. I'll talk about the implications. I'll talk about ways by which we can mitigate the identified risks, because we know that in business, there's nothing we do that doesn't come with risk. And as I say, the early bird gets the worm. So the quicker we identify the risks and we're able to come up with ways around it, the better for us in terms of our performance and the achievement of our goals. I'll also talk about why managed services and why not as well. And having said all this, I'll just take us through key considerations for procuring managed services, and I'll close with a bit about Roots Peters Limited. I'll make this interactive, so I will be asking questions, and I hope to get responses from the audience. So let me start with what managed services are. And for those of us that are experts in this field, please pardon me, so that but it's key that we work together on this and we carry everybody along. So just ignore if you know this, and if you don't, please listen attentively. Okay. So managed services, and I've highlighted key points here. It refers to a strategic long-term partnership where a third-party provider takes responsibility really for an entire business function. For instance, HR, IT, finance, accounting, to deliver specific outcomes under an agreement. So I'll repeat this so that at least it's very clear. Managed services involves, it's a strategic, so it's strategic. It is something that you're deliberate about. And it is not a short-term thing. It is a long-term partnership with a third party. So it has to be an entity outside the organization. And the whole objective of going into this partnership is for this third party, this vendor, to deliver on specific outcomes. And these specific outcomes will be clearly indicated in the service level agreement. So the service level agreement will tell us exactly what the client is seeking to achieve. Like, this is what we're seeking to achieve. This is how long this partnership will be for. And of course, how much both parties have agreed to pay. So really, instead of you growing and putting all these things together internally, you get a third party, an outsider, a partner to provide the service. You pay on a periodic basis. It could be monthly, it could be quarterly, it could be annually. And you, in return for your fees, you receive specific services or outcomes. And I'll give some examples of the different types of managed services. So we have the IT managed service, in which you have your maybe help desk support, cybersecurity, cloud services. Your infrastructure could be what you have decided to have under your managed service. You also have industry-specific services. So for instance, if you are in the healthcare service, so you can have a third party manage, is like your healthcare service systems. You can have, I think the example that may resonate with quite a number of us is banking operations support, in which a third party provides all the tellers, all the people that post your transactions for you, and some people that even do customer service. It could be that. It could also be supply chain and logistics management, in which you release the pain to a vendor who will, for instance, keep your goods for you in a store, release them based on clear instructions, and deliver it to the ultimate beneficiary. It could also be business process managed services, in which you have, like I mentioned, customer service, your call center, your human resource function. It could also be finance and accounting. So from posting to the generation of your financial statements to supporting you right through the audit. It could be given out to a third party. And of course, you have the specialized ones, in which you have people provide you with compliance and risk management support, in which they manage from, so your KYC, your AML. Please let me know if I'm using, consultants tend to use a lot of acronyms. So please let me know if I'm using unfamiliar acronyms. So AML is anti-money laundering, KYC is know your customer. So you can actually outsource that entire area of your business to a third party. So let me pause at this time to ask, how many of us are familiar with managed services? So just drop a message. I am familiar, or you can just say yes, no, or somewhat.
Drop comments. Drop
Comments.
in the chat box. Thank you.
Just drop your comments in the chat box. So yes, I'm familiar with managed services. No, I'm not. Yes, I know a bit about it. Then you can also tell us what area you're familiar with, as in what kind of managed service. Is it IT infrastructure? Yes, thank you. Uzoma, thank you. Ayorinde, thank you. Oladipo. Uzoma, no, I'm not. Don't worry. By the time you leave here today, you'll be you're in the right place. You'll learn about it here. Baba Femi, don't worry. You're covered. Rebecca, thank you. Yes. Good. So let's move right ahead. IT infrastructure, yeah, okay, yeah, that's good. So IT infrastructure managed service, yeah, I think that's more common in this part of the world. So you have the IT infrastructure, you also have banking operations support, yes. Some of the multinationals do the supply chain and logistics management. So yeah, nice to know. So at least we have quite a number of people that know about shared service. So moving on to the next slide. If you recall, the topic is actually moving from CAPEX to OPEX. So I'll just talk a bit about that now. So when you're talking about capital expenditure, I'm an accountant, but I also remember that not everyone out there is an accountant. So the accounting terms I'll break down. So CAPEX is capital expenditure, OPEX is operating expenditure. So the traditional way by which people, most entities acquire, as in are able to provide all these services, or are able to deliver on all these their objectives. So in terms of making sure things run well, so the IT infrastructure, making sure that you're able to provide your accounts on time. For banks, making sure that they're able to attend, so take your deposits, help you with your withdrawals, attend to your needs in terms of issues you have with internet banking, set you up and all that. So in the good old days, you will buy all the infrastructure. And that means you spend quite a bit of money buying all the infrastructure. So you set up your data center, you have all your systems in place, and we know that that costs quite a bit. And because of the way things that keep changing, even beyond IT, you find that you have to keep upgrading, you have to keep refreshing. So when you buy, and I'm talking about CAPEX here, which is the traditional model, you own the asset and you have it for a long period of time. So you have created an asset which you will record in your balance sheet as an asset. You own it, so you can do whatever you like with it. So that is the simple explanation. So, and there are benefits to buying, to the acquisition of the assets. So when you have the asset, you can do with it as you please. You have full control over the asset. You can do anything you like. And because it's yours, you can sweat it and get long-term savings. The long-term savings comes from optimizing the use of the asset, from utilizing it to its fullest capacity. But most of us know we don't do that. A case in point is our phone. More than half of us don't use up to 30% of our phone capability. It is not different when we acquire IT equipment. So I'll just go over the benefits again. It's yours to do as you please. You have total control over it. You can customize it as you deem fit. You can customize it to your operations, you can customize it in line with your strategy, in line with your business model. And of course, you can enjoy the full opportunity that can be unlocked. So if you optimize it, if you use it use it to its fullest capacity, you will enjoy long-term cost savings. But as with everything in life, with each merit, there are demerits or there are cons, as some choose to call it. And for you to acquire an asset, you need to bring out quite a bit of money at the beginning. So there's a high upfront cost. Then because you don't, it doesn't make sense to have capacity you don't require frequently. It is difficult for you to get the level of skill you need when you have events that are not regular. Let me give you an example. If, okay, so we have a farm and we sell online. So Cosmo Farmers, we sell online and we want to do promotions every month or every other month. It doesn't make sense for us to build capability for an event we do once a month. But if we want the level of IT support, as in latent, the level, the capability that. Sorry, do you hear me?
Yes, we can. We can hear you. Proceed, ma'am. We can hear you.
Okay. So if you want, so for instance, we now have those promotions let's say once every other month. So that means Cosmo Farmers needs to build that capability so that our server doesn't shut down when many people come online to participate in the promo. It doesn't make sense for us to invest in that for something we do once a month. So it is slow to scale. And we can't ramp it up quickly as we would like to when many customers come onto our site. And because, like I said before, as with most things, IT infrastructure needs to be upgraded. There's the ever-present risk of obsolescence when we don't upgrade as often as we should. And I said earlier that there's a high upfront cost. You pay a lot to acquire the assets. And lastly, you also are lumbered with the responsibility for ensuring that you maintain the assets, or you maintain it so that you are able to get the support you require. Now, I'll now talk about, I'm still on, okay. So I'll now talk about OPEX, which is the modern model, which is the model in which you decide that, look, all I need is milk. I don't need to buy the cow. So why buy the cow when all you need is the milk? So here, the narrative is that we move away from the heavy upfront costs that goes with the traditional model, and we now move on to the more predictable and, I dare say, affordable monthly expense. And what do you get here? You get, of course, you don't have large upfront fees to pay. You're better able to manage your cash. And like I said, you pay for only what you use. You get your milk. You don't have to feed the cow. You don't have to get in the vet doctor. And you don't have to move the cows around like Fulani cattle rearers. You just get your milk and you focus on business. I know I talked about scalability before. So the thing now is you can scale up when you have a huge demand on your services, and you can tone down when you don't. And you don't need to start upgrading as investing, because don't need to start investing in the upgrades and in the maintenance that comes with the acquisition of infrastructure. Then you can focus on your core business. Many of us, for many businesses, technology is a means to an end, not an end in itself. So we don't want technology to take over what is supposed to be our core business. Technology is supposed to be support. It's supposed to enable us to unlock value as we deliver services. So it enables us to focus on, if you're a bank, it enables you to focus on banking. If you're a retailer, it enables you to focus on selling to your customers. If you're a manufacturer, it enables you to manufacture and sell. So subscribing to managed services enables you to focus on what is key, what is important, the whole essence of your existence. It also enables you to mitigate or manage risk better, because you don't have to deal with the risk of obsolescence of the infrastructure or technology that you've acquired. And you leave the vendor to worry about the upgrades, to worry about downtime, to worry about cybersecurity. You just focus on doing your business. So moving on to the next slide. So do we have a clear understanding of the move from CAPEX to OPEX? Can I have an emoji so that I know I'm not just speaking, I'm not speaking to myself? Thank you. So let's just now bring it home again. So thank you very much. So for instance, you have a situation in which, so media and tech. So you have a media company that just decides that, okay, my data center operations, so which of course will include my servers, backup, disaster recovery, all that, I just give it over to a provider who will now make sure I am up minimum 99.9% of the time. I make sure I sign an SLA that indicates all that is important to me, all the outcomes I want to achieve. Another example is, say, for instance, MTN outsourcing all those base stations. Can you imagine if MTN had to be dealing with all those base stations, as in running around, making sure each generator has diesel, each base station is secure, the base stations are located in places that you don't run foul of the regulators' requirements. MTN has outsourced that so they can focus on the business that is core to them. So for another example I had mentioned before, banks. So pick any bank, and they now have a situation where I'll just give over all the monitoring, cybersecurity and all that, making sure that, of course, they adhere to the CBN guidelines, but that they just make sure that they leave it to a third party to ensure that the uptime is minimum 99.9%, to make sure that they're insulated as much as possible from cyber attacks. So I could go on and on and on regarding that. So I'll just move on to I think the message is clear now, so I don't want to go through the 6 examples. I'll just go on to the next slide. Okay, so what is shaping managed services? Because we know even managed services are evolving in line with the trends. So for instance, of course, so one of the things driving the increasing adoption of managed services is people wanting to move from CAPEX to OPEX. I think talked about that a lot, and people just want to pay for what they use. So they just want to pay a fraction of the cost of acquisition for them to have access to that service. So increasingly, of course, cloud software and what we call as a service growth. So software as a service, platform as a service, infrastructure as a service. Increasingly, people are just saying, look, let me let go of this to a third party whose business is this. This is a specialist, and all I need is a service for me to be able to do what I want. And you also have a situation that automation is becoming more and more it's becoming more and more topical. So we know that because of this, managed services providers have no choice but to ensure that they include automation, that they ensure that your processes make sense, that you're efficient and you're effective. So it's not just enough to say, well, just deal with it. They also know that they can't afford not to automate what they do so that they're able to deliver on the service promise. And of course, they have to reduce manual work as much as possible, and of course, minimize cost. Increasingly, you have vendors specializing in different areas. So you can't, there's been a very shift, there's been a very swift shift from being a provider that does everything to being someone that is a niche player. So you focus on an area. So for instance, if all you do is human capital or human capital management, you can provide it from end to end, and you're a known authority in this space. So you now have vendors specializing in different areas and doing excellent work there. So the jack of all trades syndrome, of course, is being phased out. So you have people that know what they do. They've decided that this is the area they're focusing on, and they're very good at it. The last point on this slide really is, of course, the increased focus on cybersecurity. And this, I think this can't be overflowed, because what I found is, while for some industries, the number of attacks are reducing, but what we found is monies lost are increasing. That is what we find from reports from banks and from CBN. I understand in, I think 2025, 3 of our top banks reported 2.1 billion was lost as a result of cyber attacks. The number of attacks reduced, but the value increased from 2024 to 2025. So if just 3 banks can report in their financial statements to have lost 2.1 billion to cyber security threats, you know that it is a topical issue, and it does make sense for you to allow entities that have made that their bread and butter to focus on it for you, because they understand threats and they're always out there searching for trends, searching for knowledge that enables them to be better providers of cyber security services. Now, moving on to the next slide. And I know this is one thing that will keep many people awake at night. Once they hear managed services, they're like, there are inherent risks. There's so many risks. And yes, I do agree with you. I'm always very wary of people who think, oh, there's no risk, and they jump into it. I rather respect someone that has identified the risk and said, yes, there is a risk, and this is how I'm going to get over it. And as on that basis, I'll go with it. Then I don't want to know what the risk is. I just want to jump into it. I think that may be termed to be carelessness. So for me, it's important as a consultant, managing risk is normal. It's the core of business. And each business has its peculiar risks. But if you're thinking of going into managed services, I'm sure some of these risks are risks that you're familiar with. Can members of the audience share one or two risks that you think are inherent in managed services? So share with us what you think are that. Once you think about managed services, what are the risks that readily come to mind? Or what are the risks you've experienced as in, okay, this risk has crystallized?
Can you drop your comments?
Comments, please.
Yes.
Okay, so while we wait, I'll talk about the one that is usually number one. When you think about managed service, so you're giving off this bit of your business to a third party, and you're like, wow. So that means you have no control. And I think as human beings, that loss of control is something that is excellent. Data loss, especially to competitors, yes, I like that. Service quality, very true. And we will be, I won't say irresponsible, but we will be in cuckoo land if we don't think of these risks. So loss of control. What happens is like you're handing over this service or this outcome you want to achieve to a third party, to a partner. And you're like, you're unable to manage what can go wrong. Yes, that is a risk. But how do you mitigate that risk? Number one, okay, let me digress a little. Some people see managed services as a digital marriage. And a digital marriage is different from a traditional marriage. I am in a traditional marriage because the traditional marriage is long-term, yes. As a matter of fact, traditional marriage is forever. The digital marriage, and in this case, managed service, is a long-term relationship. So it's not it's not something you do for a year, it's not something you do for 2 years. You do for 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10 years. So yeah. So there's that concern. So going back to, but the thing now is, with this digital marriage, you have to be clear as to what you expect from both parties, as in both parties have to be very clear as to what each party's responsibility is. And both parties have to be open to each other. I need to say, this is what I want, this is what I don't want. And when I have information that is very important to the existence of the business, to the existence of our partnership, I need to share. So and these are all elements of a good quality relationship, a digital marriage, as I call it. So there has to be clarity as to what each party is bringing to the table. There has to be clarity as to what I know, as in information that can make or mar the relationship. Of course, I have to live up to my financial obligations. The vendor has to live up to his technical and commercial obligations. So yeah, so when we talk about network vulnerability is excellent, hidden cost, very true. Compliance too, yeah, interesting. And these are all risks that we'll talk about now. So I've talked about loss of control and the mitigants, really making sure that you have a watertight service level agreement. And this service level agreement will involve lawyers, it will involve operation experts, it will involve technical experts in that field. So that you're sure that you've covered all bases. You have to make sure that your performance indicators are clear. What do you want to achieve? And when they say what doesn't get measured doesn't get done, neither does it gets improved upon. So you have to be clear as to what does good mean? What's good like? Let's be clear as to what performance is in each of the areas that are key to both parties. So we need to be sure that, okay, so when I say uptime, what do I mean? What does uptime mean? You have to be clear. And what is the measure of uptime? So that nobody is winking in the dark. So you must have a good service level agreement so that it covers all bases. You have to have regular performance reviews. So it's not just to have the managed service and go to bed. You need to continue to check that both parties are living up to their respective obligations. You need to also have a governance framework in which you're talking about, okay, so how do you escalate issues? How do you make sure? So if there's a need for a change, we know how we'll go about it. If we need to part ways, it's also clear there that, okay, this is what can result in the breakup of this digital marriage. Another issue somebody mentioned in the chat is long-term costs and hidden costs. You have to be very clear in terms of your pricing. You have to be clear in terms of what you're benchmarking to. So if it is inflation, which country is inflation? And inflation based on whose records? Is it the Nigerian Bureau of Statistics or IMF or World Bank? So we have to be clear. Our data sources have to be clearly agreed. Our performance, the thing now is your pricing model. You have to be sure that you don't have a pricing model that will leave you, the client, with the short end of the stick. So you need to know, okay, so based on our strategy, we're going to grow like this. So you're going to grow by 100%, 200%, 300%. So how are you going to, will your pricing be such that it is for instance, per deliverable? So for instance, let's say it's banking operations support. So is it per transaction? But you know that your transactions are going to grow by 200%. Does it make sense for you to have it per transaction? Or you can do per transaction up to a level, then you now start having a fixed sum as it grows. So those are all things you need to weigh and get right. Of course, you also need to look at, okay, so what makes sense? It's important that the vendor stays in business. It's also important that the client also feels equitably served. So it has to be win-win. To what do we link? What will be our anchor? So if, for instance, there's another devaluation, what will happen? Those are all things we need to think about and seek to address. You also don't want a situation in which you now then costs now start coming out from the woodwork. So you don't want a situation where you suddenly hear, we didn't include this because you didn't state it expressly, though it was implied. So you need to be very clear, and it has to be very upfront that, look, no hidden costs, bring everything to the table, let us negotiate it. So which is why it's important that both parties have integrity, both the client and the vendor. Another point that was raised is service quality risk. Yes, that is an ever-present danger. That you don't want a situation where your service levels drop. So when you define your performance targets, you also need to define the penalties when they're not met. There's a tendency for vendors to sit up when they know that for every second or for every minute above the threshold that you're down, it costs them money. They will most likely invest more in ensuring you have the agreed uptime. So there has to be, you must have penalties incorporated into your service level agreement when those parameters are not met. And you also need to have your backup vendor. If for whatever reason your vendor goes bankrupt or something just happens to your vendor, your vendor gets bought over, and the new owner decides that I don't want to do this business again. So you must have a agreed way in which you will exit the relationship and bring on board another vendor. So which is why it's very important that you do your due diligence well, both technical and financial, and ensure that you are going into business with a vendor that is not about to go bust. The vendor dependency risk is there. And what is important is make sure that you're able to manage it. So, like I said, you have your exit clauses. So if you need to exit, or the vendor decides it does not want to continue, you must have something that covers how you make it a managed exit, such that your business is not negatively impacted. And if and when you have to part ways, there has to be a way in which they manage the transfer. So transfer of knowledge is important to maybe the replacing managed service provider. So how they will transfer knowledge and how they will make sure that the transfer is seamless. So moving right ahead, I know people will wonder, what's the difference or what are the similarities between outsourcing and managed services? And sometimes people some definitions will say managed services is the outsourcing of some critical business services to a third-party provider under a service level agreement. So you find definitions like that. But there's a difference. There's a difference between outsourcing and managed services. How many of us believe there's a difference between the two, or do we think they're the same? Comments, please. So in your experience, do you think they're the same? If you think they're the same, please say yes. If you see, otherwise, no. And if you want to extend it further, why do you think they're different? No, okay, good. Thank you, Anthony. Well, let's see if you still say yes when by time. Ladipo, yes. Ladipo, Raji, Chiamaka, no. Good. Okay, so Simon, no. Good. So what is the difference between the two? Typically, and I'm using the word typically here, the scope, when it's outsourcing, the scope is usually limited to sometimes a process, sometimes a task, sometimes a function. So for instance, you say you outsource payroll, you outsource your call center, you can outsource some banking operation. So you can even you can just say you outsource tailoring, just tailoring. So people just go there and they post, just tailoring. So it is usually that, okay, either a process or some processes, some tasks, or just a function. Whereas a managed service goes from one end to the other. So let me extend some of the examples I've given. So If you say, for instance, you now want the whole of banking operations outsourced. So your tailoring. So it's like that entire area that I know what I want to achieve is an outcome. So the outsourcing speaks to a deliverable, speaks to an output, whereas managed services speaks to an outcome. Just hold it for a minute. So let me just go over that again. Under the scope of what will be done, outsourcing speaks to an output or a deliverable, so a report, a task, the output of a task. So I just want you to post for me. Once you finish posting, then my people will ensure that we do all the reconciliations, and at the end of the day, management gets a report. That's one side. But I can decide that as a bank, and I'll use a lot of financial services examples here. So as a bank, I want you to be the teller. I want you to provide the teller. I want you to provide the person that will post on the second level. I want you to provide all my customer service, the people that will manage customer services, so that that entire area of, I want the people in domestic operations to be people from you. So that entire bit of banking operations in which you are able to ensure that my customers they can deposit their cash, they can withdraw their cash. I don't know if drafts are still in use. They can cut their drafts, they can get their MasterCard, they can complain. They have issues with internet banking. So go to customer service. They can actually be the person they see when they come to the branch to deliver the experience that the bank seeks to achieve. So they're there. Teaching is like, they're also the ones that make sure that people transit from coming to the branches to using internet banking. So you have people going around, okay, what do you want to do? You want to set up internet banking? Okay, let me show you. Or you want to do a transfer? Do you know you don't need to come to the bank? Okay, let me show you. So that entire bit, they can decide that branch experience, the entirety of the branch experience, everything you do in the branch, I want to give it to a third party to deliver for me. So another thing is this: can you imagine if I am EFCC? They now decide that, look, I want to be able to check what is going on, as in, I want to be able to do for a scan to be done automatically, that I know that based on some criteria I've set, and knowing that I have access to all bank accounts, I want to be able to know any bank account where suspicious transactions are taking place. I want to be able to know in the bank accounts where the pictures there do not match the BVN that was provided. I want to do all these things, but really, I'm just a body that investigates and ensures that wrongdoers are prosecuted. I don't want to be investing in all the infrastructure I need to be able to do this. So I outsource, or I provide, sorry, I'm making that mistake. I give over the service to Roads Peters Limited. So what Roads will do is, Roads will do all these scans. Roads will ensure that, all these parameters, Roads will do all these things. We check all the bank accounts, suspicious transactions, withdrawals that are irregular, all these things, dormant accounts that have constantly been used for fraud, all these things. I now bring all these things together. Roads Peters Limited does all this. and now hands it over to EFCC. So EFCC will pick it up and decide that, yes, we're prosecuting this. We're going to invite these people for questioning. You see that EFCC can focus on its business, and its business of finding wrongdoers, criminals, and ensuring that they're brought to justice. They don't need to start upgrading all their infrastructure from time to time. They don't need to invest in all the spying equipment that is required. They don't need to continue to develop the skills of the operatives that would have been the in-house experts. They leave it to a third party, and the third party provides them the outcome. The outcome they want is, I want everything done in such a way that the banking system, the financial system, is safe from a lot of manipulation, is safe from, to a large extent, from crimes that will portray Nigeria in bad light. So this is basically what managed services will do for you. So from an IT infrastructure, so for instance, your data center, you don't need to worry, oh, there's flood in VI. You sleep because it is the business of the managed service provider. Oh, the submarine cable was was disconnected or something happened. You don't worry. The best you'll do is to pick up the phone. Hi guys, are you okay? And you'll say yes, yeah, they're working on it. And you go on with your own business. Can you imagine if you had that responsibility? Or they're building, it's like they're building roads, or they're putting up base stations somewhere. And in the process of digging, they just cut some cables. It's not you don't worry about that. Or there are cyber attacks, and they're like, oh, have you heard of this new virus? This new modus operandi. You don't worry. You just ask them that, oh, I hope you're okay, or I heard about this. I'm sure you're on top of it. You move on with your business. I think enough has been said about scope. So the approach, a lot of the time, when it's outsourcing, is reactive. It's like, oh, we're going to have a roadshow. You now start, okay, so what do we do? How do we go about it? Whereas if it's a managed service, you're a lot more proactive because it's a long-term relationship. You can't just be changing things here and there. So because they have your strategy, because they understand your business model, they know that this is what is necessary at this stage, and they will worry about it. And of course, in terms of responsibility, when it's an outsourcing, your responsibility is for what you have been retained for. So for instance, if it is payroll, anything, you're not worrying about accounts receivable. You're not worrying about the links to that. Your own is, you just focus on the specific task. But whereas for managed services, because there are many things, there are many tasks that will enable you to deliver on your outcome. So you have to make sure that all the tasks that are likely to impact on your ability to deliver the desired outcome are controlled. So you make sure that you control them. They're all together so that that outcome, the desired outcome, is achieved. So for instance, let me give you an example. If you say you're moving your human capital management as a whole to a managed service provider, and you say, oh yes, and but you decide that you want to retain your the learning program, you will find that the human capital, the managed service provider will say it's either this is in or out. Because the thing now is you're going to hold me responsible for efficient and effective human capital management. So when you take out a bit and leave me with full responsibility, you already make it difficult for me to achieve the the outcome you've set out. Then talking about technology and tools, you don't buy is like for the outsourcing. For instance, GT Bank, I can bet that the ones that provided all the desktops in use at the branches. So more times than not, you just bring in the body. A lot of the time, you bring in the body. More times than not, the infrastructure, I mean, the equipment is yours. Whereas for managed services, the MSP, the managed service provider, is provides the tools, provides devices, provide even the individuals that will manage, and ensure that they build in innovation. Because the thing now is you will incorporate it there that look, the trends that are foreseeable, they need to make sure that they're able to respond to it and quickly too. The pricing model is per project now. You pay me, I prepare your payroll every month, you pay me for it. Or that, EFCC, once I give you this list, that is it. Whereas you want a bouquet, it should be a bouquet of services to deliver the outcome. So what will happen is you will pay either monthly, quarterly, yearly, depending on what works for both parties. So you're not going to be paying per payroll. In this case, you're going to be paying for the entire management of your human capital function. Or human capital, the entire management of human capital, which of course will include even learning. Learning will be part of it, of course, payroll, performance management, all that will be incorporated. The relationship, usually for outsourcing, is like, okay, yeah, it's a vendor. So you do your service, you provide your service, you get paid. For managed service, it is a digital marriage. It is a strategic partnership, and it's a strategic long-term partnership that we know that it becomes very apparent that your destinies are co-entwined. I'll put it that way. Innovation, more times than not, for your payroll, for things like payroll, for things that are task-oriented, there's no driving force within the outsourced service provider for the person to be innovative, because the thing is what you're paying for is an output. So for instance, if all you want is you want them to know, you want me to carry out a survey and for me to give you the number of people that like to come to the banking hall between 10 a.m. and 12 noon. If it is cheaper for me as the outsource, I can decide that I'll just do Google Form, put Google Form out there. But I know that the responses I'll get will be limited. You don't know. What you're just saying is do a survey. I want to know, do a survey for me and let me know how many customers want to come to the banking hall between 10 and 12 p.m. So I know whether or not that is the time I should do something like a promo. Something is like, okay, you come in, you do 5 transfers, you get, I know this is unlikely to happen anyway, but it's like, okay, so when you come in and you do a transfer, or when let me use a more realistic example. When you come in to do a manual transfer as an account holder, and instead of doing the transfer, I teach you how to use your internet banking platform, and you do the transfer yourself, and you do maybe 2 other transfers. I give you a notepad, or I give you airtime. So that is what I want to achieve. So I've commissioned somebody to do that for me. Innovation, I may decide I'm just going to use Google Forms. It's the cheapest way of getting that information. However, as a managed service provider, if, for instance, it is a managed service, and you now say, look, I want to know what time my customers like to come to the banking hall. I want to know the impact of this on the resources I deploy at different times of the day. And on the basis of that, I want to be able to save money. So I want to know what time I should power up all my equipment. I want to save on my power cost. I want to save on my resource cost, as in how many people are in the banking hall, as in are providing service at a particular time. So if it's a managed service provider, the person will look at many things. And he will know that there's an impact on cost. So he will go into procurement and admin. And he will know that having done it this quarter like this, I need to be able to add value and make it smarter. So I will use, and I also need to be able to demonstrate that I have done it in such a way that I covered all the demographics. So all the demographics. So I know, okay, by age, by gender, by age, gender, the economic situation of different individuals and all that. So if it's a managed service provider, he knows I'm interested in how it is done. And he knows that this work he's doing has an impact on his ability to provide services more efficiently, especially if he's the one providing banking operation service. So he knows that maybe between 10 and 12, he doesn't need 10 tellers, he needs 6. So he will adopt a lot more innovation in giving me my result. I know it's a roundabout way of going about it, but the thing now is that is where the managed service provider is different. Of course, scalability, if it's outsourced, you need to, of course, okay, it is Black Friday, and suddenly you find that what you thought was going to be your maximum is now your base, and you now go, what are you going to do? You have to renegotiate that. But if it's a managed service in which the managed service provider has seen your business plan, that look, we want to grow fourfold. He knows he needs to build capacity in such a way that your requirement can be met. Now, I've talked about the differences, but there are quite a few similarities. And I'll quickly talk about that now. At the end of the day, whether we like it or not, both outsourcing and managed service involve a third party. That is one similarity. Are there other similarities you've been able to identify? Please share on the chat. So another similarity you probably need to reflect on is the fact that both of them aim to reduce your operational burden and your cost. More times than not, that is why you're either outsourcing or going the managed service route. You also find that both require a contract, a service contract, service level agreement, and all, both of them. And both of them are specialized service providers. At the end of the day, one clear similarity is organizations, by adopting either outsourcing or managed service, are seeking to be able to focus on their core business. So moving on to the next slide. I've talked about these risks, so I probably won't dwell too much on them. So there's a potential for cost escalation. But the thing now is you make sure that your service level agreement is clear, I won't say it's cast in stone, but it's such that there are no surprises. Of course, we talked about reduced control over operations, and you want that control for you to be able to respond quickly. So you have to make sure you build scalability and flexibility into your system. You're saying, oh, you lose the internal capability to deliver on some of these things. But considering the fact that that was not that those services are typically support and they're a means to an end, so you probably would deploy those resources such that they focus more on your core business activity. So of course, there's a possibility of data security and so data security breaches, compliance risks, and all that. But think about it, that you ensure that they have the right certifications, you've evaluated their ability to respond, that they also comply with both local and global data privacy laws. So those are some of the ways, and you just make sure that they address each one of these your concerns in such a way that you get comfort that they will do better than you would have had you been the ones managing it internally. So at the end of the day, I think you'll find that you have greater flexibility, scalability. Definitely, all this is all about value. There must be operational efficiency. It must bring down your cost, and it must enable you to deliver on a better quality, on better quality services and get better quality outcomes. Moving on to the next slide. So here we talk about the business impact, and really what this means at the end of the day is what value do you get? So I keep saying you have to be sure that your strategy and your business model speaks to the fact that managed services are the way to go. Because the managed service is not a silver bullet. It must align with what you want to achieve. And how do you know this? Research has shown that you can actually reduce your IT operational cost by 40%. And these are references that buttress this. You can achieve a faster response. As a matter of fact, 3 times faster. Your ability to respond to incidents are 3 times faster. Because somebody knows that if the response is not within the agreed timelines, it will cost them money. Your in-house functions, yes, they know the management will rake and all, but the thing is, the worst you can do is to exit those individuals, but it does not take away from the fact that your issues remain. So we find that issue resolution is faster when you have a managed service. The number of security incidents in terms of data breaches and all that, and cybersecurity issues, they reduce by 70%. And the sources are there. The sources are reputable sources. I know most of us say, oh, we want 99.9% uptime, the commitment. They are better placed to help you achieve this. And looking at it, because at the end of the day, whether we like it or not, it has to make business sense. So there was a comparison. So in terms of the typical IT cost comparison, as in how much do you spend? So you spend a lot more, about a third more, when you manage these IT functions in-house than if you moved it over as a managed service. So with this, you're able to achieve a lot more in terms of achieving your set business goals. These are parameters that make sense to any business. So you achieve this and you can focus. I think the ability for you to be able to focus on what is core to you is key. As we move on to the next slide. These are some managed service providers. You are probably familiar with all of them. And but are there others I left out? These are I say top global service, top global MSPs and top local MSPs. Are there others that were left out?
There should be. Please comment.
Okay.
Drop your
Comments,
comments.
please. We're talking about the leading ones. So, of course, when we're talking about the leading ones based in Nigeria, of course, Focus Group is number one. Yeah, Focus Group is number one. Aravo, Rack Center, Layer 3, Main 1. So these are all, there are others, but are they the leading ones? Yeah, okay. I think we've covered the leading ones for now. I'm sure there are others, but we can share. So let's go on to the next slide. And here, we really will look at top. There are many performance measures, and you can have up to. But the thing now is, pick. Typically, you shouldn't. I'll advise that you keep it simple. Definitely not at 5, but these are the top 5 that cut across most businesses. But you will have more than 5. But the thing now is, be sure that those 10, let's say 10, are core to the performance of that service area, and they're also core to the achievement of the desired outcome. Okay, so of course, uptime is key. The mean time to respond and to resolve issues is also another one, and the targets. You also need to set the targets. Some will say, oh, for priority one is maybe 15 minutes. Priority 4 is, and you would have defined your priorities so that it is clear that what is priority 1, which falls within maybe a 15-minute resolution timeline, or priority 4, which falls within, for the sake of argument, let's say 24-hour resolution time, whatever it is that you have agreed. So then, of course, your customer satisfaction score, whatever it is, and how it will be computed so that it is clear to all parties. So it's not a case of, oh, this is how I compute customer satisfaction or net promoter score. No. Let us be clear as to how it will be computed. Then, of course, security incident rate and patch compliance. What are we seeking to achieve? What does it mean? Then, for instance, you can say, okay, your cost per ticket. If that is what, so if, for instance, is a help desk, so the entirety of the help desk operation. So what exactly is a ticket, and how is like how, what is the pricing model? So maybe by the time you get to 500, does the cost drop? Do you move to a fixed sum that, okay, regardless of what else comes after a certain number of tickets, this is how much we'll pay, that there's an upper limit, there's a cap. Then, of course, there has to be a cost optimization target that, okay, this is how much this was costing us before. Demonstrate to us that you've brought value to the table. So they need to be able to demonstrate to you that there's value in this relationship. So, and you will define how that value will be measured. Let's go on. Next slide, please. Okay, like I said, there are plenty of stories. The internet is replete with stories about successful managed services. So, and these are some of, we just did wasn't a random search. We just picked some of the better known companies in terms of how managed service was profitable for them. So from cost center to value drivers, managed services improve financial performance. So they're able to demonstrate the value managed service has brought to the table. Data-driven enterprises, better decisions, faster. So these are some of the things that headlines you see. I've moved over to managed services so I can focus on my core business and their productivity gains across the industries I serve. Measurable business outcomes, not just IT output. The output is this is what has happened, this is what has come out of it. The outcome is you've influenced, it's like you've managed everything to ensure that this is the result, that I get the right result. So security and compliance as a service. So the thing now is you find that the headlines in terms of how well managed services have helped them achieve their business goals. So scalability without infrastructure burden. These are some of the comments that come from beneficiaries of these services. But as with everything in life, you have good stories and you have the not so good stories. So moving on to the next slide, I'll just share some headlines that have also come from botched managed services. When outsourcing backfires, loss of control disrupts operations. So a not so good story. Cost savings that never came, hidden costs of managed services. So not only did you not get the operational efficiency, costs were just coming out of the woodwork. So it's important that you are clear as to the value the managed service provider is bringing to the table. It's important that there are no surprises. Service failures damage customer experience. So for instance, and this is the case with TSB, they've moved over to managed services. And for whatever reason, the experience for customers has been a nightmare. Managed services gone awry. Then single vendor dependency creates systemic risk. You have, yes, that is a clear and evident risk when you have a managed service because it is one service provider. But the thing now is you have to be sure you're in partnership with the right provider that has the financial capability and technical capacity to deliver on the outcomes you've agreed. Said, when standardization kills flexibility. That was in response to an earlier outsourcing model by General Motors. So you also have the issues with, and these are reported issues with managed services. I'm just trying to create balance here so it doesn't seem as if it is, like I said, it's a silver bullet. Then I think the final comment here is innovation slows down under rigid vendor models. So in building innovation into your agreement, you have to make sure that there's sufficient flexibility for you to be as innovative as you would like to be. And there has to be that balance because the thing now is the vendor needs to know what really, how innovative you plan to be. Are you, for instance, you are conservative and all that, and you now want to move from on the spectrum, maybe innovation spectrum of 0 to 10, you want to move from 2 to 8. The vendor needs to be aware so that the vendor prepares for this massive change in your business model. If not, the vendor will tell you, sorry, it can't work because this is not what we planned. So now moving on to the next slide, I'll share with us some of, and this is not exhaustive, some KPIs that that you typically will want to consider when you're going into managed service arrangement. I'll just talk about I'll just pick about 5. So service performance and reliability, you have to make sure that, so you're talking about your uptime percentage, you have to, your mean time to resolve and, your mean time to report and resolve on issues. You're talking about your incident and response time. These are all things you typically will cover under service performance and reliability. Scalability and flexibility. I think I'm just picking the ones that you probably mentioned earlier. So you need to be clear as to time to scale the resources, capacity utilization, your deployment timeline. These are all things that you need to make sure you cover. I think I'll talk about service quality because I know that was also an issue. So to what extent will you adhere to the service level compliance? It has to be clear. What for your service level breaches, what is acceptable, if at all? Then first time resolution rate. Okay, so something happens. You don't want a situation that the resolution now goes through multiple iterations. You can define that there's a problem, something happens, it's resolved the first time. Yes, life happens and things can go out of sync, but once it does, it is resolved the first time. I think another issue someone mentioned is security and compliance. So we need to be clear. Okay, so what is the acceptable number of incidents and what will be our threat response time? When we audit, what will be our audit success rate and what would be our patch cycle time? Those are some things that you probably need to consider. I think that covers most of the issues we identified. Of course, there's the operational efficiency dimension. They need to be able to show that they have reduced the number of tasks, number of recurring issues, and process cycle time. Also, we need to be able to demonstrate that we are continuously ensuring that we reduce process cycle time without compromising on risk. So many other KPIs are here, but the thing now is these are typical ones. People should feel free to identify others that are critical to the achievement of the outcome. Now, moving on to the next slide, and we're getting close to the end. So when it's time to go the managed service route, what should you consider? Remember, managed service is not the silver bullet. But in having evaluated everything, you've looked at, okay, this is our strategy. So you start. Like I said, it's a strategic partnership. But you need to consider why. The strategy drives the why. Why do you need to go the managed service route? What really would you move to managed service? What will influence? Strategy also influences your sourcing model, as in how you identify your vendor. Your strategy also helps you to articulate vendor expectations. That, okay, look, you're able to now shape the expectations of the vendor. Strategy helps you to define what success is. And, if you don't define where you're going to, anywhere will lead you there. So it's very critical. It's like your strategy is the first step you need to take. So you evaluate your strategy and see the extent to which it points the way of managed services. Of course, your needs as a business, it has to be in alignment with your needs. Okay, so really, what problem are we trying to solve? And will managed services solve the problem? Vendor selection, it's a digital marriage. So it's very important that you understand what's the track record of this vendor. What industry really have they served over time? Are you going to be the guinea pig in this industry? Will they be in business for the long term? So do they have going concern issues? Then your cost structure is also very important. Like I talked about this earlier. So the pricing has to be such that there are no surprises. So you will have you may have a combination of fixed and variable, but you also need to be sure on what works for you, considering your strategy. Your service level agreement has to include all your KPIs and their measures, the KPMs, as the key performance measures, it needs to include those penalties if the outcomes are not achieved, if your measures are not achieved. Then the governance has to be very clear. How do we report? How do we escalate? What are the communication channels? Which reports do we get? When? How? Who is responsible for what within the MSP? Then data security. So they need to be, because the thing now is, at the end of the day, if there's a breach in a bank ABC, they're not going to go after the MSP. They may eventually, but they go after the bank first. If there's an issue with connectivity, people are not going to go after the people that provided base stations to MTN. They'll go after MTN. So because you know your reputation is at stake, you have to be sure that, one, the vendor will comply, has the capacity, has the integrity, and has demonstrated consistently that they are able to comply with regulatory requirements, both local and global, because most organizations increasingly are becoming global. So you never know where an EU guideline or an EU regulation will impact you. Or you're going to go into business with a company in Egypt, for instance. That company in Egypt provides services to maybe a company in the UK. EU standards may apply. UK standards may apply. So it's important that, and they'll go back, okay, who provides, and they'll ask questions. Okay, so who provides you with this service? And eventually it will get to you, and you're like, okay, so have you been able to demonstrate that you can adhere to, or you have consistently adhered to data protection standards? Because the thing now, you're going to hand over your client's data to them, or your company's data to them. So you don't want it get into competition, like somebody mentioned. And you also don't want a situation where the CBN, SEC, Financial Reporting Council, any of the regulators just clamp down on you because of a breach. So it's important that your vendor has capacity, has integrity, he has the willingness to do what is right at all times. And you also have to be sure that there are feelers there. So you know, your ears are to the ground. So you know, for instance, if he's about to be taken over, he's about to be acquired, how will it affect you? So you also need to have your ears to the ground, because what affects that vendor affects you. So I think the last slide I'll show here is just on a high level, points for you to consider, excuse me, when you are going into a managed service relationship. Excuse me, let me just have a sip of water. And while I wait, when I do this, please, can you put in the chat box, having looked at all these 8 steps, what else you think we should consider? Thank you. So I'm waiting for you. Thank you. So are there other requirements or steps to consider or to take as you go into a managed service relationship? What we have here is, one, you define your requirements, and your requirements will come from your strategy and your business model. So be very clear. And in defining your requirements, you need to know where you are so that the managed service provider will make your life better. So you don't want a situation where you go the managed service route and you find out that you're worse off. So you need to do a current state assessment. You need to look at your business model and your strategy to know, okay, yes, where do we want this managed service to take us to? What kind of outcomes do we need for us to be able to unlock value, for us to be able to deliver on our audacious goals? Put simply, just come up with a long list of providers. And this is like as basic as it gets. And once you come up with this long list, you now start verifying, okay, so you're doing outside in. So from outside, you find out what really has this, and a search. will help you identify all this before you now ask for information from the potential vendor. So credentials, certifications, and all that, have all that. So go to their websites, go to industry websites, talk to your comparators and all that. Just get that list and you just, okay, yes, what works? Then you issue a request for proposal or a request for quote. Once you do this, you now evaluate and score. Remember, technical and commercial. If you don't pass technical, there's no point going on with the commercial bit, because what is important is not it's not cost. Cost is not the key driver. I think value is the key driver, and value has to go with, okay, yes, achieving the right outcome at the right price. Of course, you conduct your due diligence, your site visits, you visit them and ask questions. Ask questions from companies that are their references. Ask from others that are not also their references. Ask, you think now is prepare, and be sure that you've covered all eventualities. Negotiate the contract and the SLE. Then you're on board with a parallel run. You don't want a situation where your customers feel let down because you're moving from an in-house sourced solution to a managed service. So you have to make sure that yes, you communicate to your clients, and you manage the change both internally and externally. So all your stakeholders must be carried along and be well managed in the course of this change. Carry out a review of competition. Yes, do a market survey and have a budget. Oh yeah, budget is key. I don't think the board will give you all the money in this world. So you need to know, okay, how much is it costing us? How much are we willing to save? And the thing now is, what value are we seeking to achieve? Yes, the board will not just say, okay, go on and do it. There will be a budget, and the budget will be driven by knowledge of what is happening and knowledge of what you have in your pocket. So I think we'll just summarize what we've done so far, and by playing a video. The video just summarizes everything I've said so far. And what I've found is when people talk for very long, you tend to lose the audience. So we'll just play a short video for you to refresh on all we've learned so far. And please type your questions in the chat box. Thank you.
If you have questions, drop in your questions.
Cloud computing has become the heartbeat of modern enterprises. Only understand managed service providers in the cloud, but know exactly how to make them work for your business strategy. Here's the problem. Enterprises dive headfirst into cloud adoption with big dreams of scalability, cost savings, and innovation. But somewhere along the way, things fall apart. Costs spiral out of control. Security becomes a headache. Performance issues crop up, and the team feels like they're constantly firefighting instead of innovating. And the biggest problem? Alignment. Executives want to see tangible business results, things like faster time to market, reduced costs, and new revenue streams. But IT teams are stuck grappling with outages, technical complexity, and unplanned expenses. MSPs are your cloud Sherpas. These are third-party experts who take on the heavy lifting of managing your cloud infrastructure so you can focus on your core business. Think of them as your strategic partners, handling everything from monitoring and security to scaling and cost control. For many enterprises, the idea of outsourcing cloud management might seem like handing over the keys to the kingdom. But here's the reality: MSPs don't just take tasks off your plate, they actively drive better results. They bring specialized knowledge and expertise that most internal teams simply don't have the time or bandwidth to develop. Here's an example. Let's say your organization is managing workloads across multiple cloud platforms, AWS, Azure, and maybe even some legacy on-prem systems. Keeping everything secure, compliant, and cost-effective is a monumental challenge. Now, let's talk about some of the common misconceptions around MSPs, because these myths are holding back a lot of businesses from tapping into their full potential. Myth 1, MSPs are only for small businesses. This couldn't be further from the truth. In fact, enterprises managing complex, multi-cloud environments benefit immensely from MSPs, particularly when it comes to scaling operations globally. Myth 2, they're just glorified IT support. MSPs are far more than that. Yes, they handle the nitty-gritty technical details, but they're also strategic partners. They help you optimize costs, secure your data, and align your cloud investments with your larger business goals. And myth 3, they're expensive. Here's the thing, while there's an upfront cost to engaging an MSP, they almost always save you money in the long run. From reducing downtime to optimizing cloud spending, the ROI is hard to ignore. So, how do you actually get started with MSPs? Let's break it down into 4 actionable steps. Define your objectives. First, get crystal clear on what you want to achieve. Is it cost reduction, enhanced security, greater scalability, maybe all of the above? Having a solid list of goals will help you communicate effectively with potential MSPs. Assess your current state. Take a hard look at your existing cloud infrastructure. Identify the gaps, the pain points, and the areas where you're struggling to meet business goals. This is where transparency is key. Knowing where you are is essential to knowing where you need to go. Choose the right MSP. Look for partners with proven experience in your industry, a strong track record with cloud-native solutions, and a clear understanding of your specific business needs. Remember, this isn't just a vendor, it's a partnership. Collaborate and iterate. Once you've chosen your MSP, treat them as an extension of your team. Regular check-ins, performance reviews, and strategy updates will ensure that your cloud environment continues to align with your evolving business goals.
Okay, so thank you very much. I hope that was clear. I think what I thought to do was to summarize all I've talked about over the last 1 hour plus. And I think the first question here, I think is also similar to the second question. So maybe my response may address both questions, but please tell me if it doesn't. So Oladipo and Maina. So can you scroll up again? Oh, okay. Oladipo became Anthony. Okay, no problem. Okay, so the first one is the first question I saw earlier, actually. I think in summary, it's like, okay, how do you know when to move from outsourcing to managed services? Or what if you choose to just stay as an outsourced service? Like I said, managed service is not a silver bullet. You may just decide that your business circumstances, your strategy, your business model has not given you a compelling reason for you to move to a managed service. And managed services are not, they may not be the best option for every business. So you need to check that, okay, so our strategy that covers the next 5 years, what kind of growth are we expecting? How much innovation are we bringing into the business? What kind of risks do we see that we find that by the time you look at how you want to innovate and the risks inherent, you find that that innovation is what is key for you to achieve your strategy. But you find that you don't have sufficient comfort that you are able to manage that risk. Then it may be the time for you to consider bringing in an MSP that has demonstrated over time that they're able, because that is all they do. they're able to manage that risk that is limiting you from achieving full potential, achieving that strategy. So when you, okay, and I quickly scribbled down some comments. So some of the things you think about, I already mentioned your strategy and business model, that it shows that, look, we can't achieve this with the resources we have. If we want to achieve this, it is going to cost us so much from a technology perspective. And what will also happen is that it will take so much of available capital that we won't have enough for us to do our core business. So that is a time for you to start thinking of a managed service. And when you think about, okay, yes, this particular thing that I need to achieve my business objective, this is the time investment that is required. And you find that there's somebody else that can provide, so that can provide that service such that you get a synergy that, okay, the person providing that service, with you focusing on your business, there will be a quantum leap in performance. Then something else you also need to consider, and I keep referring to your strategy. Or so when you look at it, okay, your strategy says this is what you want to achieve. This is the business model, and this is your route to market and everything. But you find that that some of the things I need, the cost is so unpredictable that I can't plan for it. And I probably don't have the capacity to negotiate the way I should because of maybe how much of it I need. So what if I go to an MSP whose business is a niche player in that, the MSP is a niche player in that industry, and they basically will negotiate better, get better quality service from maybe the ultimate vendor, and deliver a better quality outcome for you. So for instance, if you think about keeping up with the cybersecurity risk, as in making sure you have all you need, all the upgrades, the cost is so unpredictable. You really, really can't. You probably decide that, look, I don't want to worry about this. You need to make sure, you need to worry about the management of cybersecurity risk, but you don't need to be the one doing it. So you can say, look, I will give this to somebody else to worry about, to address, to manage this risk while I focus on my business. I keep saying the word focus. Then if certain things that you need to do, you can't do. So innovation is held back because of a lot of limitations in terms of either we don't have all the money, we don't have all the capital in this world. So it's like, look, I need to invest in this, but I don't have the capital. But it is the ticket to the game. Once I do this, I will be the clear leader in my industry. And you now find that, look, this innovation I need to bring into my business, I can't afford it. I can't afford it in terms of time. I can't afford it in terms of cost. So managed service provider, here you come. Then when you find that you are dropping the ball often from a regulatory perspective, a service perspective, and all, and you find that, look, this is becoming a distraction, you may decide that, look, let me give it to somebody else that I know has that knows that, look, this is the company's work 24/7, and I can hold them responsible. I have recourse to them. So if anything goes wrong and they don't meet the service, so at least the penalties will be there. And the penalties will both be financial and otherwise. So they know that, yes, there is a sanction for not performing. Whereas if you had it in-house, really, what would you do? Somebody drops the ball, you are slammed with serious fines. The worst, like I said, the worst is you dismiss the employee. But whereas if it's a it's not to say that you may not have regulatory infractions, but that the thing is it to be minimized because it is part of what you have in your SLA. And when that happens, somebody pays, the business, the vendor pays. So when you find you're dropping the ball, when you find innovation is being held back, when you find that this particular area of my business, the cost is so unpredictable, I can't keep up, when you find that something is taking so much of your time that you're losing focus, and when you find that you're unable to deliver on your strategy and your business model, then you need to decide on those areas where you will hand over those outcomes to the managed service provider to deliver the value you want. So, Maina, have I answered your question? And Anthony, can you give me a thumbs up if I have? Okay, thumbs up from Anthony. Maina? No, I haven't. Or Maina is not on the call.
She has responded. She said,
oh, yes. Okay, thank you. Thank you, Maina. Are there any other questions?
Oh, yeah. So a question came in, I think from YouTube, says, in time-bound contracts,
Yes.
how can both parties ensure expectations are clearly defined and measurable from the start? And the second question, there's a part B to that says, what strategies do you recommend for handling unmet expectations, especially when the contract period is fixed and renegotiation isn't immediately possible?
Okay. The first question is, can you go over that? I didn't quite hear you well.
In time-bound contracts, how can both parties ensure expectations are clearly defined and measurable from the start?
Okay, that's very simple. Before you start the contract, make sure you've defined all your expectations. And those expectations will come out as key performance indicators. Very clear. Very, as in, it is better to have too much than too little. So make sure your expectations are clearly defined. And when you clearly define your expectations, you also need to make sure that they're measurable. So what doesn't get done, like I said before, what doesn't get done what doesn't get measured doesn't get done, and neither is improved upon. So you need to be clear as to what good looks like. This is what I mean by uptime. This is what I mean. You need to define what uptime means. I now need to define what kind of uptime you want. Same thing with customer experience, your net promoter score, your customer ratings. Resolution of incidents, you need to be clear that, okay, what is a major incident? What is a minor one? And how long do you expect it to take? And how many iterations? Because the thing now is it can take 2 days, but it's like many iterations. So you have to be clear as to the iterations. Then you also have to be clear as to the sanctions. And more than anything, both parties must adhere to their respective responsibilities on time. Then, and I know there's a question from Anthony, who is responsible for tracking compliance rules and regulations? I think, number one, you need to build it into the contract that the vendor ensures that he has a framework that enables the vendor to be aware of new rules, new guidelines, regulations. You on your own part also have a responsibility to be sure that they have covered all bases. Because at the end of the day, you're the ultimate beneficiary, and you're the one that will suffer the reputational damage. So there has to be someone responsible, which is part of the management of the service. Someone is responsible for scanning the environment, making sure. So one, you've made it the responsibility of the vendor that, look, you have to be alive to your responsibilities. You have to know all the rules. You adhere to them. But it's life. Sometimes some regulations are very onerous and can be costly. When that happens, because it's a long-term partnership, both parties should come back to the table and have a discussion based on transparently provided information. Information has to be very clear. This one, you have to demonstrate, okay, in doing this, there's an incremental cost of this. And some can be absorbed by the vendor, and some may require you to pay a bit more money for you to achieve that. But the thing now, because it's a partnership, it is not cast in stone. So you can negotiate and achieve a win-win. So how do you handle regulators updates while focusing on the core business? You need to be sure, you need to also be aware of regulations in your industry. In certain industries, you are not allowed to give certain services or certain areas of your business to managed service providers. So you have to be sure that it is allowable, and so you have to carry out your discrete inquiries, and you have to carry out your definitive inquiries. You can ask your regulator that, yes, write to them formally. Is this allowed? When the process of doing, you don't want, the thing now is, if you decide, oh yeah, you just try because they probably won't respond, or they will say no. You don't want a situation where you invest in a long-term contract and the regulator says, pull the plug. You would have invested a lot of, I know there will also be a clause there for the vendor that when you cancel, because having made significant investment, he doesn't want to be left with the short end of the stick. So you have to be sure that what you're going into is allowable. Sometimes you are the outlier in that space. You may be the, as an event, the client may be the outlier, and you may have a situation in which the regulator starts by saying no. The onus is on the client to carry the regulator along and get the regulators buy-in and get the buy-in of other stakeholders. Because beyond the regulator, you also have the data privacy regulators. Beyond the industry regulator, you also have the data privacy regulators and all that. So you need to make sure that, okay, you're following all the protocols that have been defined for you to achieve that. So any other questions? I'm just confirmed that they've received a satisfactory answer to their questions.
Do you have any other comments, or you think that she hasn't answered your question? But I believe Mrs. Abedoyamuso has done justice.
Okay, thank you, Anthony.
2-hour masterclass. But before we wrap up, I think she has one more thing to do, and I think that's introducing Rhodes Peters.
Oh, okay. I think that's the final slide that has a bit about Rhodes. And Rhodes is actually, but among us, the advisory partners, we have, I think this is a joke among us, that we have over 140 years of experience among us, among the four of us. And we have expertise cutting across human capital, finance, strategy, operations, risk management, digital, technology. And the thing about us is we focus on delivering value, and we are outcome driven. So the outcomes clients seek to achieve are the driving force for us. So our industries, of course, we cut across our services are delivered across various industries. So, of course, technology, financial services, energy and resources, manufacturing, agri, that's my new passion. We have a farm, Cosmo Farmers. I've developed skills in the agri space very rapidly, and very practical skills too. And lastly, public services. Our website address is there. Our office is located in Lekki Phase 1. You can send us an email if you want to know a bit more about us. I think to the right is my bio. So thank you very much for your attention. And I wish you all the best of luck as you navigate your journey in the managed service space. Thank you. And thank you, Anu. It's been an exciting session, and I hope the audience has gained one or two new things in terms of managed services. And your questions also have helped me to reflect a bit more as we support clients that are navigating, as in moving to managed services. Because you need, like I said, you need experts across different areas. So you need to be sure that you're delivering an operationally efficient service. You need to be sure that technically the way they want to provide the service will help you have the desired outcome. Of course, legally, you have to be sure that you've covered all bases. So managed services is not a technology play alone. It cuts across ensuring that your operations will run well. It cuts across managing stakeholders, ensuring, and of course, managing change among your stakeholders. So thank you very much yet again. And I'll hand over to Anulu Apo now.
All right, Ma. Thank you so much. Thank you. Thank you. I want to believe we still have a number of persons here. Drop your thank yous to Mrs. Adedoyin Amusu. She has done justice to this topic in 2 hours. 2 hours masterclass. Do you know how much you're going to pay for that? Do you know how much you pay for that? That's 2 whole hours. That's an MBA class right there. In fact, actually, more than MBA, right? An advanced business class. Thank you so much, Matt. Thank you so much. I mean, I don't think I need to go over what has been taught so far. I don't need to go over this, but you would all agree if you're a vendor, if you're into managed services, if you're a managed service provider, that some of the things that you've not been implementing before, after this webinar, you want to commence implementing them, integrating them into your systems and also implementing them. So it's not about you listening only. You need to also take the feedback, assess what you're currently doing, what you're doing well, what you're not doing well, and then adopt some of the strategies that has been shared with us today and integrate them into your system and ensure that you implement them. Is beyond integrity, also ensure that you implement them. Today has been a wonderful session. I want to believe that focus group webinar series is just one that is, filled with quality people with experiences, decades of experiences. As you can see on Mrs. Adedoyin's bio, she's not just an executive director. She's also a non-executive. She's a founder, 2-time founder, Cold Small Farmers, and also Rhodes Peters Limited. We can't say thank you enough. Thank you so much, Ma. Your time, of course, is invaluable. We can't pay for your time. We want to say a very big thank you. We're grateful. We're very, very grateful. And we're looking forward to seeing you and meeting you at the anniversary dinner. And I want to believe that you'll be there. So yes, thank you so much, Ma. I'm wondering why I've not seen people's thank yous drop their emojis. What is going on? Are we busy or something? But yeah, thank you so much. Let's look forward to the next webinar. This is happening next month with Mr. Kunle Salau. Either Mr. Kunle Salau or Mr. Austin. Okay. So yes, you're going to receive the flyers. You're going to get the webinar link to register. We'll send you an email as we've done since the first webinar started. And we're hoping that you join us once again. Thank you so much, Ma. Thank you so much for your time. We really, really do appreciate you. Thank you, Ma. I think you're muted, Ma.
Thank you very much. I appreciate the opportunity. And I was just saying, to the audience, thank you. Thank you for an interactive session. And enjoy what's left of your day. Take care.
Thank you, Ma. Bye.
Bye.
Bye, everyone. Thank you so much and enjoy the rest of the day.